to speak on navigating the dark night of the soul because so many people I know are going through a version of the dark night of the soul. This last year was really challenging for me personally. I had 3 significant deaths last year. So, and my best friend from childhood, her 20-year-old son recently completed suicide on December 23rd of last year. And so she is absolutely in the throes of the dark night of the soul. So I thought, you know what? I know lots of people, so let's talk about it, shall we? Okay. All right, so what is the dark night of the soul? It came from, it's the title of a poem written by St. John of the Cross in the late 1570s. So in undergraduate, I was a Spanish major, and I read a lot of Christian mystic writing. And if anyone thinks that the New Age stuff is out there, they have obviously never read any of the Christian mystics. So, and then he went on to write 2 books to talk about what he meant. And I included this picture. This is actually a picture that my daughter took. Who knows what that is? A horse. It is a horse, yes. But a lot of people can't see it. Like they know they see something, but their mind can't make sense of what they see. So to me, this represents what it feels like to be in the dark night of the soul. Can you guys see the horse?
No, but you say that, yeah.
You can't? All right, wait. Oh, there we are. So this is the eye and the muzzle, the nose. This is the shoulder, that's the belly, and that's the hip.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah. So you look at it, you know you see something, you don't know what it is. So the dark night of the soul is a point in spiritual development. If you are on a spiritual journey, you will inevitably get to the point of a dark night of the soul. It is where you have to let go of what you think you know and what you have learned in order to learn something more, in order to go to that next level. What it feels like in the dark night of the soul is an existential crisis. You don't know. It's a profound questioning of everything. Who am I? It's a collapse of your identity. It's the death of the ego. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we fit. The world doesn't make sense anymore. I go back to my friend. She is one of the most positive people I've ever met, I've ever known. I hate microphones. She is generous. The world in her mind worked in a certain way, and when her son completed suicide, it didn't make sense to her anymore. They were a loving family. She adored him. He knew that she adored him. He had people who loved him. They were financially blessed, but the world no longer worked the way she thought it should work. So she's stuck in this place of, I don't know how these things fit anymore. When I say the collapse of identity, so we go through life with an identity. We create our identity, and society is also very helpful in telling us who we are. Have you guys encountered that? Mm-hmm. Yes. So we may develop an identity as a spiritual person. So within that, a spiritual person, there are all these rules that we don't necessarily know, like spiritual people aren't supposed to cuss. It's so funny to me on Facebook, someone that people identify as spiritual, if they cuss, then, oh my goodness, you're not supposed to say that. Or spiritual people aren't supposed to get angry. I seem to remember Jesus getting quite pissed off in the temple and flipping over tables, right? Mm-hmm. Or nice people. Nice people are supposed to respond a certain way. So if you're constantly living in this identity, all identities are limiting. So if we identify with our profession or an attribute, or at some point we become limited. So if we're going to continue to grow and develop and learn, that identity has to collapse. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So what prompts the dark night of the soul? It can come, like with my friend, with a profound loss or a death. It can come at a transition point, divorce, or empty nest, or retirement is actually one of those points, because your identity is shifting. It can also come when you have gotten everything you thought you wanted, and you get there and you're like, is this really all there is? I thought there'd be more. Has anyone ever felt any of those things? Good, okay. All right. There we are.
Point back this way. People always point to the wall and there's nothing up there.
Yeah, the projector's there.
Okay. So I decided to, so the individuals, I know on an individual level we're experiencing the dark night of the soul, retirement, death, blah, blah, blah. But I've also been thinking that we're experiencing it on many levels. So our country, in my opinion, is experiencing a dark night of the soul. So I'm not going to talk about things on a political level. I'm just talking about them symptomatically. So the things that make me think that the country is, up here, sorry, is experiencing the dark night is the suicide rate is increasing. This was really shocking to me, and I'm hearing about it more and more. I mean, obviously I'm very, very tuned in since the death of my friend's son, but it is increasing. So this is, I can't remember, I think this is, 2016. So these states right in here had the highest increase. They increased from 35 to 58% in each state, somewhere in that range of suicides. And then the next one is these states. They increased 31 to 37%. And then these states, they increased 19 to 30%. And then these were the 6 to 18%. And then Nevada, I think we should all move to Nevada, decreased by 1%. But, huh? Yeah. Yeah. So in 2016, 45,000 people aged 10 and above died by suicide. It is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and it is continuing to rise. Anyone have anything to add to that? No? Okay. Mass shootings are on the rise. So, and we can go into why all of that is, but the truth is they're continuing to increase. So in 2015, there were 7 mass shootings. In 2016, there were 6. In 2017, there were 11. In 2018, there were 12. And just in the first 6 weeks of 2019, there have been 3. And the death rate, as you can see, so the green is the number of people killed. It is continuing to rise. And hate groups are multiplying in the United States. So since the year 2000, hate groups have more than doubled. And what's interesting to me in this statistic is over here, well.
Not the wall.
I'm so confused. Don't you laugh at me. All right, so over here. So this one is general hate groups. So in 2005, it was 8. I don't know how this chart is, but it's just how they're divided. 12 and 21. So in 10 years, general hate groups have almost tripled in the number. So a lot of things have changed, but just people who are generally hateful and they don't like, it's the anti-LGBTQ sentiments and it's the anti-Muslim sentiments. And so that's fueling a lot of that. Between 2015 and 2016, look at the difference, the rise. So hate groups are multiplying. So we are, in my opinion, a country that is in crisis and is experiencing a dark night of the soul. And all of this affects us personally. All of that energy that is out there, all of that that's in the collective conscious of the country, affects us personally. We pick up on it because we're spiritual beings. Oops. All right, so the world is experiencing a dark night of the soul. Terrorism, the terrorist attacks, and I use the word terrorism by people who use violence and terror as a means of controlling or getting what they want. So from the late 70s, it has increased dramatically in the world. I mean, this just shocked me. 40,000 people died in, that looks like, what, 14 or 15, 2014 or 15 from terrorist attacks. And then the earth is experiencing, yes?
What was it? Is we've only seen this rise in this crime and all since 2016.
Yes.
It's been going on a progressive, well, it's been declining for a long time, according to the stats that I saw, but only since here in the last few years have we seen an increase on things.
Well, when you look at this, all right, so this is worldwide, this is what, about 1977 or 8. And it started to increase, and then it stayed about here until this. I mean, this sharp rise.
What was that? What events was that? ISIS.
It's world events. I don't know.
It's Syria and ISIS. This is global. This is not.
Yeah, this is global. But what's interesting, so this is, the purple is the world. This is Iraq. The green is Afghanistan, the red is Syria, and the blue is the United States. So this is 2001 here.
So the whole rest of the world.
Yeah, so purple is the whole rest of the world. So these were attacks in France and Africa, all over the world. And again, terrorism isn't just ISIS. Terrorism is any group who is using terror and violence to push their agenda. We have a habit of thinking of terrorism only in terms of ISIS, but it's not. It's any fundamental group or any group that is using violence and coercion to push their agenda. And then the earth is experiencing a dark night of the soul. The weather is getting more and more extreme. So this is, and this is hard to see, this is a graph of the increase in severe weather. And it is steadily going up. So the trend is up, even though there are years that it is down. The trend is steadily going up. In 2019, just this year, so we are just 3 months into it, we've already experienced record low temperatures in Chicago, record high temperatures in Australia, flooding, biblical flooding in the Midwest here in the United States, record snowfalls in France, devastating tsunami in Indonesia, and 30 significant, as deemed by the U.S. Geological Survey, significant earthquakes just in 2019. So,
also, they said that the biggest iceberg was ready to break off anytime that's ever been seen.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really a great loss of water.
yes. So the earth is in crisis. Ooh. So what is the gift of the dark night of the soul? Anyone know what, anyone?
Faith.
Faith, yes. And not just faith, because faith is a term that I think that we as spiritual people use pretty loosely. And when I went through my own dark night of the soul in 2012, that was just a crazy year. And 2013, I was still recovering. Faith became an active word in my life. Not just a pretty concept, not just something that I talked about. It was an active, moment-to-moment word in my life. So the gift of the dark night of the soul when you move through it is that despite what we see, despite what is going on, despite reality, we know all is truly well. So how do you navigate through the dark night of the soul? And so Melvin said I had 20 minutes. I could talk about this for a long time. So we're going to move through this fairly quickly. But how to navigate through. So the first one is you start asking questions. You know, we are trained through our educational system to look for answers. But that's not where our power is. Our power is in asking questions. So a great one when you don't know who you are or how you fit or how the world makes sense anymore is you start asking yourself, how do I want to show up in this moment? Who do I want to be in this moment? What is the truth in this moment? Okay, you start asking yourself those questions as you are finding your way through the dark night of the soul. Because every question you ask opens up other questions. And questions open up possibility. Questions are where energy can move through. When you find an answer, we shut down. It's kind of like, have you heard that thing, you know, when you're listening to someone, we listen to the point till we form a response, and then we quit listening. When we find an answer, we shut down. Our energy stops flowing. So keep asking questions. And choice, I love this. The most profound personal growth does not happen while reading a book or meditating on a mat. It happens in the throes of conflict. When you're angry, afraid, frustrated. It happens when you are doing the same old thing and you suddenly realize that you have a choice. Questions help you understand you have a choice. Who do I want to be? I get to choose that. Use the law of giving and receiving. This is my daughter and her horse. I love this. The student says, I'm discouraged, what should I do? The master says, encourage others. So the law of giving and receiving, if you want something, the quickest way to do it is to help someone else get that. So if you want to be happy, you help someone else be happy. If you want to make more money, you help someone else make more money. You help someone else do it. Now, I've been working with, and my clients tend to be what I call overly helpful, super responsible, caretaking kind of people. They're the super givers. And their imbalance comes from giving too much. So in this, with the law of giving and receiving, you have to open yourself up to receiving. You have to open yourself up to receiving answers, to receiving kindness from others, to receiving blessings from others, and from the universe. Because have you ever tried to give something to somebody and they're not a gracious recipient? Yes. It really sucks. Like you find something and you're so excited to give it to them, you're so excited to help them, and they're like, eh. Yeah. It doesn't feel good. Well, the universe feels that way too. You know, you're like, I really want this, and they try and give it to you in ways that you don't think it should look like, and you're like, right? And it's learning to ask for help. So back to my friend, she is one of the most generous people I've ever met. She is used to being the overly helpful, super responsible, caretaking kind of person for every single person in her life. And in this time period where she is just crippled by grief, she has had to learn how to ask for help. So when we get a diagnosis from a serious illness, we have to learn to ask for help. We have to invite in the receiving. So it's a flow like this. It's the giving and receiving. Any questions, comments about that? No? Okay. And then focus, trust, and let go. I crammed 3 things in that I could talk about for a long time of each of those. But the focus is sometimes in the dark. I love this. During our darkest moments, we must focus to see the light. This picture I actually took when I was flying out. Her son died in the early morning hours of the 23rd of December. So I was flying out that evening to go and be with her. And because I was flying west, I got to see this image, and this was amazingly comforting to me. And I focused on the light. during that moment. So you have to really focus to see what you want to see. You have to trust. You have to trust that God is there. Faith and trust, faith and focus are hand in hand. So you have to learn to trust. So how I got through 2012 is I started with a mantra of, I trust you, God. I trust you, Jesus. I trust you, universe. I trust you, creator. Whatever you want. I use all the above. But I trust you. So in the moments where I didn't know what to do, in the moments where I was terrified of what was next, I trust you. And years ago, I had this guided imagery where all of a sudden I felt like I was in the palm of God's hand. And so that was a really powerful imagery for me. So I would imagine being there. Because in those moments when you feel completely alone, if you affirm that you trust in the divine, it helps with that feeling alone. And the trust is, it doesn't have to look, getting where I want to go, it doesn't have to look how I think it's going to look. It doesn't have to be that. It's trusting that it's all going to be okay. No matter what, all is well. And then letting go of control. And so for those of us who have issues with control, that is the really hard part, is letting go of what you think it should be, how you think it should look, what you think should happen, how you think other people should be. It's letting go. So it's focusing on how you want to feel, focusing on moving forward, focusing on the light, and trusting, and then letting go and allowing. So there is no darkness so dense or so menacing or so difficult that it cannot be overcome by the light. When you keep moving forward through the dark night of the soul, things will make sense. The picture will get clearer. You'll see the horse. And the lightness will come again. The lightness is always there. You'll just find it. Any questions?
Yeah, my feeling in this is that sometimes you have to feel the darkness.
You do.
Because if you just avoid it, it becomes a dragon with 9 heads, and it just pops up in different ways.
Well, and not only that, if you don't feel the darkness, you can't really feel the light because you have no comparison. You know, I worked with a woman years ago, and she would call people who never wanted to look at the darkness or look at the shadow bliss ninnies. They only wanted to look at the light. And there are lots of people who go through life, you know, only wanting to look at the light, but you don't appreciate the light until you understand the darkness. And Melvin and I just had a conversation the other day about the shadow. Do you guys know what the shadow is? Yeah, the shadow is the part of our personality that we don't like, we don't think is acceptable. And if you never pay attention to that part of you, it grows and it comes out when we don't mean for it to. Mardi Gras is actually, because it happens at Lent, it is actually a formalized way of letting the shadow come out and play so that it doesn't come out, it doesn't leak out in other ways. So that was a really great point. Thank you.
Yeah, the Native Americans, they have a very beautiful tradition that when you go into somebody's teepee at the tent, they have a basket outside, and in that basket you leave all your grievance and your problems, so you don't sit and bother other people with your own personal.
Nice. That's really nice. Can we do that outside of every building? Yes, ma'am.
I think that to me the most important part is that you have to accept how the universe brings things and be open to seeing the support that you're getting. I know that some people, for example, I've had conversations, people looking for relationships, and what I've learned to do is look for love everywhere and sit in Starbucks and look for the love between friends and between a mother and a child. And once you start seeing love, you don't keep missing the relationship because it's everywhere.
Yes.
And when my dad died on the way there, it's a whole long, it was wonderful, horrible part of my life, but it was so amazing how the universe showed up and it was 3 weeks after 9/11. There were, you know, if you focused on the guys with the guns in the airports, you were traumatized. But I saw sparrows everywhere I went, like the sparrows of the air and that where is it, Matthew? Pay attention to the birds of the air and the flowers of the field. They don't worry. Why are you worried? And I saw them everywhere. And it was hilarious to me because I have ministers in the family. They didn't see them.
Yes.
Until I said something, and then they were like, oh, I saw that too.
Yes.
And to me, that was the universe showing up to say, it's all okay. You know?
Well, there is the law of polarity, and you cannot, something cannot exist without its opposite existing at the same time. So darkness cannot exist without light existing at the same time. It's just where you put your focus. And this is a lot of the focus is what we're going to be talking about, what I'm going to be talking about in my workshop. So absolutely, absolutely. Yes?
Deepak Chopra does 21-day meditations,
Mm-hmm.
about 2 a year. The last few years it's been with Oprah. And they're wonderful ways to do things. This one he just started last week, and the subtopic is gratitude to grace.
Mm-hmm.
And Oprah talks for just a few minutes, and then he does, it's wonderful, and then you meditate for 2
Mm-hmm.
minutes, or you go to sleep, whichever. Because I listen to it in the middle of the night a lot. But I highly recommend it. And just go sign up for his free meditations, and it shows up in your email box every morning. So for 21 days, I'm on a schedule.
And you can, and it's good for 5 days after. Each one is good for 5 days. And you can download the app so you can have it on your phone. So, all right, any other questions or comments or judgments or criticisms?
Well, you have to have the dark sometimes to rest.
You do, yes. Absolutely. In fact, I liked that affirmation, resting in faith. And so this is the dark night of the soul is the opportunity to rest in faith and deepen that trust in that faith. Thank you, guys.